What's non-conforming subdivision?
According to state law, here we are. But I think that you did exactly kind of what you talked about. It sounded fine. It sounded better that way.
We had a lot of public hearings.
We ready? You guys ready? Okay. We'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting tonight. Thank you for being here with us. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And to begin, we'll do a roll call. Beginning with Councilman Busenbark. Here. Councilman White. Here. And Councilman Barrett has been asked to be excused. He's in the Wasatch Front. Councilman Riley.
Here.
And Councilman Allen.
Here.
We have some new councilmen, so it's going to take me a while to remember their names. To begin, we'll have an opening prayer given by Councilman Riley, and then if you would all follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, we're thankful for the opportunity to meet as citizens of this great city, and we ask and pray that as we continue to make decisions that will affect its citizens and the future of the city, that Thy Spirit will be upon us, that we'll make decisions that would be pleasing to Thee and pleasing to the citizens of this great city. And we pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up is the minutes from the last meeting. Has anyone noticed any amendments or corrections to those minutes that need to be made?
Were the ones that Councilman Allen made in the email to Carol made?
Well, I've read it now, but I gave you a copy of this in front of you.
That's the only ones I have.
Any others? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Councilman White and second by Councilman Busenbark. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll move into our public comment period. This is an opportunity for those that are here that would like to address the council. You can take up to 3 minutes. And we ask that you come forward and state your name at the podium, or call it a podium. And come on in, Jim. And we ask that if there is somebody that makes a comment and you agree with that comment, instead of coming up and also making the same comment, you can raise your hand that you agree with what's been said. And just in lieu of time. So is there anyone at this time that would like to take opportunity to? Yes. Please come forward and state your name.
My name is Nikki Mika. I'm here for conditional use permit occupation. I've been to the zoning meetings for the past 3 months, and I've kind of read over some of the provisions and stuff that allows home occupations, and that's kind of why I'm more so going towards a conditional use. I feel like the conditions for my home to be where I want it to be is because my home is not accommodating to clientele. So I have purchased an outbuilding from a lady that was doing nails out of it, just a couple blocks away from where I was living. And she was working out of it for a couple of years. And I purchased it from her. I purchased my home. I purchased that from her because she moved to New York, I believe. But, I'm just trying to get a permit so I can, work from home, my home occupation. I kind of read through like the permitted uses of, that you allow for home occupations. And I fall in 2 of the 7.
Do you have references to those by chance?
Pardon?
References to the uses that you fall within?
Yes, I got under the permitted uses, 1707-020. Number 7, professional services property license with this properly licensed with the state of Utah. And then number 19, barber shops, beauty shops, and nail salons, which a nail salon is what I'm trying to set up. And I'm looking for a home occupation, so it was stating in here that so the purpose of a conditional use, it says right here in 170810, certain uses which may be harmonious under special conditions in a specific location within the zone, but may be improper under general conditions and in other locations are classified as conditional uses within various zones and required conditional use permits for approval. So I'm just trying to get a conditional use permit to run a home occupation from my home. Because of the circumstances of how my home is set up, I live in a tri-level home. I have bedrooms upstairs, bedrooms downstairs. I have elderly clients that come in. I have clients that have strollers, and I have clients that have animal allergies. I live with animals. The only thing that's on my main floor is a kitchen and like a small sitting room. And I don't necessarily want to be running a dusty business out of my kitchen because I don't feel like that's terribly sanitary for anybody involved. So that's why I've chosen to do a nail studio in my backyard. My lot that I'm on, a corner lot, I won't be bothered by parking. All of my clients can just come and park right into my lawn or right onto my driveway, walk straight into my backyard, straight into the outbuilding that was placed. And they don't have to walk over grass. It's all gravel. It's behind a 6-foot privacy fence. I did get an insurance policy for it. They know that it's a building. I've got an insurance policy right here. I did talk to the lady in Duchesne, and I know that it's a separate city, and what they do in Duchesne City is not what is allowed here, but they do have a lady. I have that letter here if you guys want to look at it. And then I also have gotten a signature from all of my neighbors stating that it wouldn't bother them if I was to run a business from my home. So hopefully you guys can consider allowing me to do that under the circumstances of my home. Hopefully the conditional use, I will fall under that category. It kind of seems like in all of the paperwork and all of the reading that I've done, it kind of seems like I fall under the permitted or the conditional use categories. So, and I know that it's going to be talked about. I tried to get on the agenda, but I was a day behind the schedule. I came in Tuesday of last week and Monday was the deadline. So.
Well, what we'll do, and for those that do take an opportunity to address the council, we won't discuss here, but it's good that you tell us what your concerns are so that we can research them and do that. We will be talking about that a little later in the meeting, so I hope you stick around and we can discuss some of those things as well. So appreciate you.
I just wanted to let you know that I'm here and I'm wanting to ask for some permission and not be punished for asking for permission.
Right.
So.
Well, and we'll talk about that later on in the meeting. We appreciate you following the proper steps to do this. We really do. We know that some people don't go through these steps, and that's how people end up getting to or doing things that maybe you're wanting to do, but not having to go through the same process. And so we're trying to avoid that as well. But we'll discuss that a little further and hopefully come to some conclusion on that. So
Thank
Would you be willing to submit, can we get copies of what you've put together so that we could look at it as a council?
As far as,
Just all
just
your
the
materials,
information that
the,
you,
the signatures from your neighbors and the materials you've gotten.
sure,
Okay.
sure. I right now have,
if you want to scan that and email it to Carolyn or I, we can get it to the council
okay,
and on a digital copy or something like that.
okay,
which would be-
yeah. So
easy
do
for
you
you.
want the letter from Duchesne City?
That would be fine too.
Okay.
Anything that you have,
And then the signatures from my neighbors?
Mhm.
Do you
Sure.
want my insurance policy?
I don't think
I don't
that's
think so.
necessary. That's more of a, so,
All right,
yeah, thank you.
I can do that. Do I just email it
Call me tomorrow.
to you? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Yes, Daniel.
I haven't had the chance to see you guys in meeting, but as a renter on 600 North, I just wanted to express my gratitude for the phenomenal job done on the roads over there in that area with my other neighbors. So much better, so much smoother, just better overall. Thank you so much for all the work and for Ryan Snow and what he did in getting that prepared. Just wanted to express that.
Thanks. Any others? Seeing none, we'll move forward. Our first item is a minor subdivision approval. Dan, Karen, would you like to come up and explain a little bit about what's going on with that?
Maybe planning and zoning, what our desires are is to take this property here, divide it into 2 lots. It's currently 1 lot. We want to break off this and call it lot number 1, and these other buildings and businesses are to be lot number 2. There's going to be a new owner in the tire business, and he wants to relocate into this business and add a new showroom and remodel. And in order to do that, we need to start separating those buildings.
Do we have somebody from planning and zoning that's already seen this, Steve?
Yeah, we saw it and, everything fit with what we asked. We came a while back, talked about, paving and whatnot, and that'll be done later when, if you ever split off that back section. Something that was, the council approved that when he came back then also, so there were no concerns with planning and zoning.
Any questions from the council?
Yeah, it's Steve. So the only question I would have was, it'd be written so that lot 1 or lot 2 would have an easement for access from lot 1, right? If it was written, because If-
There
if-
was, for a road.
correct.
at the end.
And that
There's a dedicated road. Yeah, it's a dedicated.
shows on the plat here,
And lot
so
2 goes all the way.
66 feet.
This is dedicated from Highway
What I'm
40.
saying is, if this is sold to a different owner, this owner can say you can't have access
Oh, I see what you're
using that road.
So my concern would be if you sold lot 2, being a separate lot to somebody else, they'd still need to be able to have access.
Like I say, this is a city road.
Oh, okay.
As soon as any one of it's broke off, they have to be paved to buy these other 4 businesses. It'd have to be broke up and then paved, and then the road would be dedicated to the city.
Okay.
There's a 66-foot easement. that, has been- That's what they asked for, so that's what it's been surveyed for.
perfect. Any other questions? Seeing none, would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
A second.
We have a motion by Councilman White and a second by Councilman Riley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Let's get her done. Yeah, do you have your pen, Carolyn? Take care of it. All right. Next item is discussing an ordinance 2020-433. This is a zone change request. This is out on 3000 West. Looks like it's in green already there. You representing, Nate?
Yeah, the purple, I think, is
Right. Always, okay. And this is proposed to be changed from an RR1 to an M2.
actually, it is the green. The piece that is zoned, I think, is that green piece right there.
That's what I
Between
was
the purple and the house up above.
Gotcha.
And the purple, I think, is already being used for industrial use.
Okay.
And then there's LaRose Welding that's on the piece just south of that purple piece.
Okay. For those of us that don't know what that means, an RR1 to an M2, can you explain that, Steve, a little bit?
RR1 would be rural residential, 1 acre minimum lots, for housing, agricultural, things like that. M2 is your routine.
I'm right here.
You can
There he is.
explain M2 better. An R1 is actually 40,000 square feet or more. It's basically for large scale residential, large lots. When we annexed the Cove in, Stonegate and all that area was designated an R1 to start. The two properties in purple came in, one's the oil location, the other one's Heath Cook, and petitioned to be rezoned an M2 so that they could use it for storage. And Nate called me, it's Nate Mueller's property, about the possibility of rezoning this. It attaches to the M2, which is our heaviest manufacturing zone. But everything within an M1 or our other thing could be done within this parcel and that. So as far as staff, I guess that would be me at the moment. And it did come to zoning, it was approved to go to an M2. And I asked Nate if he'd have a representative come because there was a few questions that I couldn't answer as what was his further plans. It would not need any other plans. I mean, as an M2, it could be sold off as an M2, you know.
And M2 is heavy industrial, you say?
It's our heaviest zone.
Okay.
In that, but anything you can do in an M2, you can do in the M1. M2, you can't do in an M1, but everything M1 you can do in an M2.
Gotcha.
And all that. So, and it went to zoning with approval.
Okay, perfect. Are there any questions by the council?
Is it just the green square above the two purple ones
Yes.
or the whole green area?
The big piece that has the pivot part of
It's
it.
80 acres. It's just short of it. I think it's 79 point something.
The piece that has the pivot swoop in it belongs to Genos, I believe.
And that's going to change too?
No.
they're-
Oh, okay.
Just the-
So just the one south of the pivot?
Sandwiched in
Okay.
between there.
Right.
I actually grew up there, so I know that very well. It's right across the street.
The property is a prime property. It's not really good for agriculture in that area. If you looked at it, it's got a lot of greasewoods.
I was gonna say, it grows greasewoods all day long and alkali.
And what is the purple zoned right below it?
It's M2.
M2?
There's a drilling rig right now in there.
It needs to be attached to a zone that is zoned that already.
And then the ones just to the right of the purple, are those M2 also? The tall,
Those are in the county. Anything that is white
okay, is county.
would be in the county. The green
Okay.
is what is in our current zone for R1.
So give me an example of worst case somebody could do in an M2, What's- a gravel pit? That's the worst case?
Pretty much. It's heavy manufacturing. It's things that you don't normally do where you have proximity, where you could disturb other people. I mean, usually you have more, depending on the industry, how much parking, this and that, maybe more noise, this and that. It's not light industrial. It's usually heavy.
Okay.
But it could be light. It could be used anything manufacturing wise.
That would be my only concern is the residents that are directly across the street, but
Well, and this
it's not
should-
really
this should have
heavily
a public
populated
hearing
either.
here. We should be having a public
This is a
hearing.
public one.
Yeah, we're just discussing right now and we'll open it up to the public here in just a minute. So, Any other questions from the council?
You said that the plan and zoning commission or group was okay with this one?
Mhm.
Okay, we approved it.
So seeing no further questions by the council, we'll go ahead and consider ourselves in a public hearing. And anybody that would like to take opportunity to voice their opinion for or against can come up at this time.
Do you have any questions for me then?
Any questions for Nate before we let him go? Nope.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll turn the time to the public. Is there anyone here that would like to? Steve?
Let me just say, at planning and zoning, the question was raised, what will happen with this? And basically, to protect the residents and things that are across the street. One thing that can be done is when the site plans come, when something's decided, this would just allow them to have something to be able to advertise that something can happen there, and it'd be when the site plans come that we could put some mitigation to protect those residents across the street. And so that was one concern some had, and that's how we look at it, is wait till there's something didn't happen, and do a site plan.
Is that something we'd have to stipulate here, or is that just automatic?
That would be when they come for a
When they-
site plan, because they're not gonna, more than likely, they're not gonna sell it as one big chunk, they're gonna divide it up and have a use chosen then. And so that's when those kind of things may happen.
Yes.
So they don't have.
State your name for the record, sorry.
Nate Snow, sorry. So,
I know you, but she's got to take minutes.
they don't have immediate plans of putting anything there. They bought that as speculation, and that they just feel that this would be a better use for the property, and that's why they're requesting a change. So they don't necessarily have any manufacturing or any type of plan for it that way. Most likely, like Mr. Timothy said, it would be divided sometime in the future, but there's no immediate plan for it right now.
So if somebody did want to put a gravel pit there, they'd still have to come to the city to get the plan approved and everything.
But we have to keep in mind also that when we, and this goes back to what has already been brought forward, when we look to do something in a zone, it's either a permitted use or not a permitted use. And if it's a permitted use, there's not much we can do to say, no, you can't. Once it's zoned that way and it's a permitted use, it's a permitted use. So we need to make sure that we understand that.
Just to comment on that, as the planning board has been going through Title 17, we've actually looked at this, I think it's Title 17, Chapter 21. We've been working through this, and we're trying to do away with conditional use where everything is permitted or not permitted. But at the moment, we haven't concluded that process. So I believe a gravel pit still falls underneath the conditional use and would be required to come in. And there's several other deals until we complete that process. Just so.
Thank you. Any comment from the public? Seeing none, we'll consider ourselves back in regular session and would entertain a motion.
The motion would be for the ordinance.
Well, I'm just to entertain a motion whether to approve or to not approve. So.
I'll move to approve.
Well,
Okay.
I don't want to stick an iron in any gears, but I'd like to hear comment from the Cove, because worst case scenario, if it was built on that piece of property, they're going to be downwind from it.
Okay.
And so anything that's done on that property, the Cove would be pretty affected.
Correct. So we have a motion on the floor. We'll hold on to that for now. Your concern should be addressed in this meeting. That's why we have a public hearing. And they have been notified. So what happens when we do a zone change is anyone within 300 feet of the affected area will receive a notice in the mail, and they'll know the dates and times. They probably already came to planning and zoning, but they would have known of this meeting as well. And so if they were concerned about it, they should be here. But I do agree with what you're saying.
Okay.
I second the motion.
So we have a motion and a second motion by Councilman Busenbark and second by Councilman White. Well, we'll do a roll call. Yay or nay?
Yay.
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 Okay. That's unanimous. Motion passes. So, all right. Next item. is ordinance 220 or 2020-434. This is a zone change request from R110 to R2. Who's representing the Wests on this? Bob?
Where the arrow is 25 foot wide lots. It's a wide drive. And, that center one's 50 foot wide, the other two north are 25 foot, 25 foot, 50 foot, 25 foot, 25 foot. And we were asked to sell the property to 225 foot to north and the 50 foot from the person in California and the 225 foots below some people here. So there was 3 separate owners. And we sold it to a party, and then they went to the city to see if they could split the lot 75 by 75 and found out that there's a zone there that states R10, which means 10,000 square foot per lot, per building lot. And so, and then another criteria was it needed to be 82 foot wide. So it didn't pass on those 2 conditions, 82 foot wide and 10,000 square foot, because to take 150 feet and 100 feet, that equals 15,000 feet. And if you split in half, that's 75 foot on each lot. So the city said that wasn't something that they wanted to do. And then the city planning and zoning came and said, look, there is an opportunity if you'd like to split that lot to do a twin lot. And 3 years ago, the city was presenting with a twin lot proposal and made the ordinance of R2, but made it not specific to a specific lot or situation, but to be brought to city council on an individual basis to see if they wanted to grant an R2 in that particular area. And that's exactly what we're here, or why we're here now, is to simply ask for an R2 to put a twin home. And I've got some examples of some twin homes that are examples of what it is. A twin home is not a typical home. It's not a duplex, it's not a regular home. It's a home on the left side and a home on the right side. And they're basically called twins because they're facilitating on both sides. And that would facilitate an ordinance of 75 foot, which would handle those twin homes. The disadvantage we have right now is the city has those lots at 25 foot each. And really, about the only thing that can handle 25 foot lots is mobile homes. And why they made that subdivision there, our purpose was to assemble it, not subdivide it, but assemble it, so that there was a larger lot, and get rid of the 25 foot lots. And go in and put in a nice twin home to facilitate too, because a 150 foot wide lot is quite a large, long lot for just a small home or a bigger home. And another reason the person that bought it was to protect the subdivision that's to the direct west of it, which is called Greyhawk subdivision. And we didn't want some problems next door.
Thanks, Bob. Any questions? Yes.
So the plan is, if you can, to make that into 2 lots, 75 feet wide each, to put 1 or 2 homes there, basically. And they'll join on the 75 foot line.
Any other questions? from the council?
That house just south of those lots, isn't it like a rental with two, the little single house just south of the lots?
It's a manufactured home.
Is it? With two residents, or is it a single?
It's a single home
Okay.
on a permanent foundation.
The R2 zoning, I know it's been discussed and explained, but I haven't been able to find it in the municipal code at all. And I don't know if the public, is that something they can?
Yeah, that's probably because it's fairly recent, and we'll give time for Steve to come up and explain that. And that would be a great time, Steve, if you want to explain to that. And the reason it's not online is it was just approved not too long ago, and so it's probably not been updated online, but we do have the actual code available.
I'm curious to hear that.
So the R2 zoning, we spent over a year and a half trying to hammer out something for R2 zoning to help people build what they'd like to build. And Ryan, if you want to pull up that, I have just part of the slideshow that I used to present when we were working through that. R2 zone, Vernal has it. If you look at Vernal's map for their zoning, the majority of Vernal is actually, for the residential, are either R2, R3, or R4. They actually have very little R1 in comparison to the others. And what they do is basically their R1 would be what we have as the R16, R110, R120. And then their R2 covers all the R2, kind of like what we have, and then their R3 would be like our RMs, and then they have an R4 that's the RM, the multiple housing. And so they actually don't restrict like we do a lot size for the R1s, which I thought that was kind of interesting, Greyhawk subdivision is R110. Developers are gonna get the best bang for their buck building big houses up there like that. They would drop the lines to be a bigger lot, They're not restricted, we have to be this size, and stuff. I thought that's kind of interesting. And so another interesting thing with Vernal is they have pockets of 2 to 3 lots that are a different zone than everything surrounding it, and it's residential lots, and that's kind of what this would be. This would be 2 lots within an R110, doing an R2 zone. There's a lot of benefits to twin homes. Go to the next slide, is Uinta County's. Uinta County also has it. And they have a minimum 5,000 square foot lot size, so what Mr. West is proposing would actually be a lot bigger than that. He'd be 7,500 square foot. And one thing that we found when we were working through this ordinance was a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about twin homes. They view them as duplexes or condos. A duplex is a 2-family home on 1 lot. Usually the utilities are shared, and it's one owner or a company that owns it, and they're rented out. With a condo, you have separate lots, but all you own is the house, and they have their separate utilities and everything, but you own the building, you don't own the lot around it. That's usually owned by the homeowners association and stuff. What a twin home is like was discussed, they share a common wall. And that's the end of it. There's a lot of energy savings for twin homes. They're economical to build because you're building, that's one less exterior wall you have to build. And so it's good for the builder, which makes the home price lower than what it could be for if you were to build that same home split, cost quite a bit more. Usually separate owners because they're, it's a separate lot, it's its own house. The only difference is they share that wall. Go to the next slide. These are some examples of twin homes. Like I say, a lot of people view them as a duplex, and they're not. And Bob showed you some pictures of others, and the next one's another. These are out in Orem, if I remember right. we can have, there can be nice twin homes. You know, this is a nicer part of Orem where you wouldn't think that, you know, most people's misconception of a twin home, they wouldn't have them. Then the next one, this is down in St. George. And this next one is also at St. George. There's one more, no, that might be it. Yeah. And so they found that the twin home rules didn't get put in. They were approved by council. They were approved at planning and zoning. We went through everything. They just didn't get published. And that's why I can't find it was an error somewhere. But they are on the books. They were approved, everything else. And like was mentioned, planning and zoning, we felt that it shouldn't be planning and zoning's deal to choose where these twin homes would have to go. Because a twin home can be a little tiny home, or it can be like we see larger, nicer homes. And so that's why we decided we'd leave it up to the developers. You know, if the developer wants to build that type of home, then we'd leave it up to them to do that.
Yes. So in a lot of cases, you can't pick out a zone and rezone it as something different than it is unless there's another zone like what you want to zone it to adjacent to that property. You know, in this case, explain to us, is that a decision that the city made when they approved the R2 zone, that we could do that? Or I've just, in the back of my mind.
So spot zoning is something that people bring up. The state recently has clarified some things in some of the trainings with Utah League of Cities and Towns and other entities. And spot zoning would be a single lot. This would be two lots. So it would create an actual zone, not a single lot. And that was the idea, is it would be able to be used in smaller areas. And partially to see how it would work. You know, I feel it would work well here. You know, you can have two really nice homes and more easily maintained yards, things like that, with these smaller lots versus having, like you said, a 150-foot wide lot. You know, you put a 60-foot wide house, you still have a lot to take care of.
So that raises the question that I had too, is when it came before council before, I don't know that I was here, but the proposal to actually make two individual lots and build two individual homes on that, was that denied?
Yes, that was denied. It was an R110.
The lots were
minimum
big enough.
square footage of a lot is 10,000 square feet. It did not conform with the ordinance, and it was denied because of that.
Yeah.
And as planning and zoning board cannot go against the ordinance and allow anything less in that particular zone than 10,000 square feet.
So I'm thinking out loud, but I'm thinking if we're going to allow an R2, why wouldn't we allow an R16 and be able to build two individual homes on that property versus the twin home?
Setbacks, right?
My understanding, well, basically, we do not spot zone.
Well, but that's what we're doing.
Well, that's what we're doing, but my understanding and talking with Steve, because I was not with zoning at that time,
Yeah.
that this was particularly created for smaller areas within other zones to provide an alternative for this. And this was actually created, I understand, for the particular instance where we normally wouldn't rezone to an R16.
So with two small homes, you'd probably have to have a setback with each home, right?
Mhm.
If it didn't fall
Maybe
under
a lot
this.
smaller homes.
Well, not
Okay.
necessarily. I'm just going to throw it out there because not necessarily, because I've looked at this a lot. I mean, I studied this when it came up to last time. I don't know why, but I know this is at least the second time that it's come up. If you look at the lots, they're 82 to 83 feet. If you look at all the rest of the lots in that area, is the frontage. So really what you're losing is about 7 to 8 feet on the front, which means, yeah, your home, it's not a lot smaller. It may be a little smaller home that can be built there. The thing that I saw the biggest difference is the depth. So whatever home or person decided to build on that lot would have a smaller backyard compared to the rest of them. But from the street, you wouldn't notice any different. So that's just something to throw out there. I mean, I guess is what I'm saying is instead of only having one option to zone this to an R2, we have an option to zone it to an R16, because if we're going to spot zone, we're going to spot zone. And the other option is we just say it's got to be one lot and build on the one lot and stay conforming to what's already there. So we have three options on the table in my mind.
Do we have any other R2s anywhere in the city?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet, no. We do have some twin homes in Roosevelt that were created a long time ago.
But that's a different zoning anyway, right?
But those are in an R16 zone. But like I say, those were before any of that kind of zoning was done, and so they were grandfathered in.
So what's again, I like to stay out of people's way. I mean, if they want to do what they can, what's the worst case scenario if we did zone it as requested? It'd be a nice house.
If we go with an R2 zone, Bob has committed to building a twin home. He won't be able to split it into two lots and do anything else other than build a twin home on this piece of property. That's what this is zoned for. And to cover the setback issue, each one of these zones, including the R2, have their own separate setbacks. Now, 90% of the setbacks are 30 at the rear, 25 at the front, but the side setbacks vary with the different zones. But it is specific, and unfortunately, we can't bring up that R2.
So how do you roof a house like that? So when so you were thinking it, right? I'm thinking you don't like your neighbor and you have to re-roof the house. How do they do that?
So one of the things that we discussed and we strongly, I don't know if it was put in there that they would be required to have an HOA or conditions, CCNRs with it.
We'll get to the public hearing in a second.
But something like that is what was brought up when we were discussing this. You know, 30 years and it's time to re-roof, you know, that has to be done, you know, and outside maintenance has to be done due to CCNRs or HOA, things like that. And that way.
Is there a requirement to have an HOA or a CCNR on this?
I thought we did.
Because I think that would be a necessity in my mind.
Right. And I thought we did. And I do want to let you know that when this came before planning and zoning, we had 2 members voted for it and 3 others would not vote. So it didn't fail at planning and zoning, but it didn't get approval. They just wouldn't vote.
Well, it's definitely a little controversial. So any other questions for Steve before we open it up to the public? Seeing none, we'll consider ourselves in a public hearing and would allow the public to come up. Again, if you have something to say, please come to the front, state your name. And if somebody says what you're thinking, just raise your hand so that we can see who's thinking the same. But we'll...
Hey, my name's Cody Fisher. Can we zoom out just a little bit so we can see? So this is I live in this neighborhood, so that's why I'm here. But we've got an R110. So first off, so my personal belief is if we can combine these 5 lots in question to meet the current zone that they're in, to me, that makes the most sense. Instead of spot zoning something different. And before I go any further, I apologize. I know a lot of people put a lot of time into R2 zone, and I do feel like that's something our city needs, so I do appreciate that. But to spot zone it in, I think that's something that's more needs to go in a plan development, and that's where R2 zone gets put rather than being spot zoned in, unless that was the only option in this particular case. So these 5 lots that we're talking about would be what, 0.37, 0.36 acres combined. So just to
0.37.
So this lot here is 0.24. This is just going, so you have reference for what size lots are in this neighborhood. This lot's 0.25. Let's see,
I think you got the size of the lots wrong. Because
this lot's 0.34. This is off the county GIS, so if that's wrong, then I'm up in the night.
Because like when it was originally proposed.
This is
one was gonna
0.34.
be 0.12 and the other one's gonna be 0.13, which is
This lot is 0.35.
17,000 square feet.
Well,
Two different.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm looking, that's what I'm getting my numbers off of.
on
right
the
there,
county, I can tell you, because I have it memorized. 0.6, 0.6, 0.12, 0.7, and 0.7. That's how those lots work. I looked at it several times. 0.37. And what it amounts to is if you split them in half, you have two lots that are 0.185 in size,
And then my
which is
lot,
not, I mean, it's less, but it's not much less than what the current zone is.
and my lot's 0.64, so we've got anywhere from 0.64 to 0.25, with this one being 0.37. So it's not smaller than the smallest lot, it's not larger than the largest lot, but it's the same size practically as these two lots. And that's if we just leave it make it one lot as an R110. So that's all I have to say. That's how I think it should go.
Mr. Fisher, I have a question. So what would be why would you be against it being an R2 and putting a twin home?
It's just my personal belief is you've got all these people that have invested in this area as zoned how it is. And to go in there and change the zone to something else when it can be fit into the zone that's already there, that's just the belief I have. I think it should stay as closely, if it's able to stay the same zone that everything else is, it should stay that way, unless there's a reason why it can't.
But I think my question is, are you worried about the value of the homes in the neighborhood or?
Nope.
Okay, just it being different.
Yeah, just the fact that we all bought in that area because of the zone it is, and that lot can fit the same rules that everything else does in the area. That's just, I think it should stay as closely to all that as it does. I don't have any beliefs about value of the homes or anything like that. So.
Anybody else?
You said it, just raise your hand if you agree with them.
Yes. All those that agree? Okay. Are there any, yes,
I have another concern.
okay.
Back.
Please state your name.
Oh, I'm Doug Gilly.
Yeah, I know who you are.
I live 2 houses from where we're talking. You know how many years ago, you guys know, that they developed the lower subdivision? Has it been 12? How long ago has it been?
I'm not sure.
But looking at the map back when they developed the lower subdivision, the road off at 9th, originally they was gonna go through and they cut that out. That's the road right there. It isn't divided yet, but that didn't go through. As a result, we have all the traffic for that subdivision coming off of our road and Gates Drive, okay? Everything comes through that way. And so off of this hill, my concern is if that turns into 3 lots, is what it looks to me like it would be turned into, then you're probably gonna have 3 different of these left that you could build in that area. So you're gonna have 6 residential properties in that situation instead of the 1 that we feel the roads to sustain. The road traffic is already tremendous on that road from what it used to be. The road to that is totally not maintained. I mean, for 10 years, there's been potholes and it's totally tore apart. So maybe that needs to be repaired. But,
Which road are you talking now, Doug?
just going down to the subdivision right there in front of, right there where the arrow is.
Okay.
For years, that road is totally thrashed. And, but I'm worried about the traffic coming off the hills right there. That was a concern back then. You're just gonna have 6 residents there in the future. It looks to me like if you do 1, the other 2 would follow suit, so only thing you could build there. When really the traffic, should be for one more home. So they, the traffic into all that subdivision is just come off the gates on our road, and it's gonna put more pressure to that. So that's another concern of mine, is the pressure of the traffic going in that area. So
Great, thank you. Any others? Okay, anyone would like to rebut what has been said? All right. Any other discussion by the council? So I'll just make a comment. Well, I'm going to call on you, Ned. You had your hand up earlier and then you didn't comment, so.
There's a thing called party wall agreement. I own, I think the only other twin home in Roosevelt that I own both sides, they're both rented, but they just have to have a party wall agreement so that they can re-roof and paint.
Is that done in a real estate contract?
Usually it's done when you record something at the title. If
Okay.
you don't have one, then it's hard to do it on twin home if you don't have one. They don't always have them, but that's what it's called.
Gotcha. So I guess that we're here to discuss whether it can be zoned to R1 or R2. Again, if we're going to spot zone, in my personal opinion, 0.18, I mean, what do the people feel like here? If it could be zoned and two separate lots and two separate homes that look similar to what's already there, is that okay? Is that not okay? I mean,
What would be the difference?
really, in my personal opinion, I'll revert to Nate on this too, is value, home values.
Conformity to the neighborhood, maybe.
Yeah.
And so it would be just like doing the same thing he wants, but having 20 feet in between the two houses.
Well, there
Or
would be
whatever
what is the, did we lose Dean?
So
Well,
Stephen, is it big enough to separate it into two legal lots to put two homes on?
well,
In an
Not
R6,
R6, yeah.
side yard minimums are, they are about, you would have about 20 feet. I think would be the minimum.
well, it's an 8 foot, I know it's 8 foot on an R110
8 and 12 equals 20.
on the side. So 16 is 32
8 on one
feet.
side and 12 on the other side.
That's what I think it is.
That'd be 16, so your house size width wise could be 59 feet wide.
It'd be 20 feet from 75, which would be 55 foot wide.
I think the setbacks for the zone are smaller than the 20 feet.
Yeah, it's 8 and 8, isn't it, Chris? On the side, 8 on each side.
I want to say it was 8 and 10, but
So I think is it-
total 16, maybe there's 60 on one side and minimum 16.
Well,
And
But the only way to do that would to be change the zone to an R16 where it's an R110. So we're changing the zone to do that too.
exactly.
I have a
I'm
question.
just throwing that out there as an option.
Yeah, the discussion basically is spot zone. Would the public comments changed if we were deciding to rezone to an R16 instead of an R2? Would anybody's opinion change or?
Can I?
Yeah, you bet. This is a public hearing. This is what we're here
So-
for.
My name's Heather Swenson. I live in the house almost directly behind this man's that I just built in Great Hawk. And we finished our home in August. Our lot size is 0.36. I wasn't aware, I hadn't done the addition on it, but why not just keep it at 0.37 like has been said? Everything in that area is about that size. And whether it's over home value or what in that area, just move back to Roosevelt into a great lot that I thought was gonna have nice neighbors with the same size lot, and now I'm gonna have a twin home going directly behind me.
Thank you for your comment.
Sorry.
One of the things too that I've thought about this, and this is just my personal opinion, but to me, there's a difference between buying a lot in an area that would allow twin homes and then somebody exercising that right to do that, and buying a lot in an area that doesn't allow it, building a home, and then later having to deal with that. Does that make sense? Because we've seen both. So we've had people concerned when a duplex goes in across the street, but their area is actually zoned to allow that. and they're concerned, but that should have been their due diligence when they bought the lot. So I get what you guys are saying. You purchased in there, you built in there. Yeah, so that's something to consider. That's all I'll say.
I would, Chris Anderson, I'd also say too, if we're gonna spot zone something like that in Canton, we are, as a city council, and you guys as a council are gonna open that up to every other development that you set precedents, because this was all an R1 neighborhood, this whole thing. And we're gonna spot zone one spot in there to an R2. Be prepared that just what I see is if this development happens somewhere in another neighborhood, you've already set precedents that now you're gonna make, you approved an R2 in an R1 development. So if they wanna build down by New Centennial and it's all R1, and then someone says, I wanna put an R2 right here in the middle of this neighborhood, you've already approved it, so you're set precedent. So, you know, I would say the same thing, if it's all R1 and Bill's people bought lots that are around it and expected it to be single dwelling homes, and all of a sudden you plop in a twin home, I would be upset too. I mean, I do live right on the other side of that too, but it just, I have bigger lots too, and when I bought that too, they were all big lots. And so I'd see it as could be one lot, or if anything, the other option I would see would go to R16 and make it two homes. Because the value is important, and let's not lie, that's the reality. And everybody's when I built a garage, that was the big deal, it was value of your property. So these people spend quite a bit of money on their houses, and obviously there's gonna be a lower value home right in the middle of that neighborhood.
Thank you. Yes, Chris.
So it's 60. minimum
Chris
on
Thompson.
one side, 60 minimum on one side and 16.
I could be wrong.
That's about it. Thank you, Chris.
Nate, do you mind if I ask?
Yeah.
Nate, you're a real estate professional. For that neighborhood, besides the traffic, would a really new, nice twin home do anything for property values besides adding another 2 vehicles to the?
Well, what other twin homes are in Roosevelt?
None.
I own 2.
Oh, okay.
They're
So,
both rentals.
So that's probably what it'll end up
I
as, is what he's
bought
saying.
them both at a foreclosure.
So there you go. Thank you.
I'm
Yes, please.
Stephanie. I'm Stephanie, and we live on Gates Drive. And the first thing I want to say is I agree with Doug Gilly about the traffic. We have a huge amount of traffic that comes up Gates Drive into those subdivisions, and I don't live right next to it. However, I live next to, what are we calling this? Another townhome.
Twin home.
I lived in Meadowbrook, right across the street from a twin home. And when it was owned by the same owner, sometimes it was okay. I lived there for 16 years, and the majority of the 16 years were not great. They were rented out to different people. Some people kept the yard up nice, some people didn't keep the yard up nice. And depending on who rented out, I get that they're wanting to have it sold to different people, but it wasn't a great situation. And I liked the picture that they showed of some of the homes that they were going or thinking of building. The 2 garages, it was a huge problem in ours. We had 2 in this particular home. There were 2 garages that faced the street. They were single garages, not double like they showed. I'm not sure which one it would be. There was a huge problem with traffic. They were parked in front of my house, they were parked in front of my neighbor's house, they were parked all the way around the cul-de-sac because they only had 1 parking space. And the majority of the time, those people that lived in there had their garages so full that they couldn't park in their garage. That's not something I know that, we can discuss, but it was a problem. It was a problem with traffic, it was a problem with the kinds of people that we got in there. And this type of a neighborhood, we kind of moved from that end of town to this end of town somewhat for that reason. I know that sounds really snooty, but this is a nicer area of town, and in my personal opinion, I would rather see it either go to 1 lot. The small home doesn't affect me, it doesn't bother me as much if it went to that other one and there were 2 separate smaller homes, but to think about 2 townhomes going in and there being the possibility of renters, more traffic, more congestion right in that area, it makes me think about where I just came from. And I would rather stay away from that in this end of town.
Thank you. All right, we've heard a lot of it. Is there anything new that we haven't heard yet that somebody would like to bring up? Yes, please, and then Hal.
I'm Craig Collins, and if you zoom in, right above his lots, you'll see my place. That's the old Sadler's house. It was built in the 1960s. Initially, I don't have anything against somebody putting in a nice double house like that. I think it would be a good outside. I don't think it would be that bad. If you look at where the top line of that property is, I've walked at and I've looked at it really closely. There's concrete work that goes out from my property into that first lot and the back over. The only thing that concerns me is that that lot cuts off part of the lawn, and if there's gonna be a fence or something up, I don't think there would be. I think he's probably has some really good plan for that property, and I think it'd be a good thing. But the only thing that concerns me is that used to be part of the lawn for that property, and then it was sold off. Somebody allowed it to be divided, and it cuts right across the middle of the lawn. My ideal situation would be, let them have the double house. I think it'd be good to have some neighbors. I don't think it would hurt that much. The only thing that concerns me is where that property line is, and it cuts, your lines are off, you have to scoot it up and over a little bit. It kind of goes right through the lawn.
Well,
Now, I have nothing to say about it because it's not my property. It was sold off, belongs to him now. If he was allowed to have a little bit smaller space to put his double house on, and allow me to get that little bit of curbing back, I'd have a full lawn again. And I wouldn't feel like somebody's gonna put a house right in front of mine.
You should have voiced your conflict right before, no, I'm just kidding.
But like I said, I don't have anything against the project. I think I think a man should be able to do on his property what he do as long as he's not hurting anybody. My only concern was, I don't wanna see a building going right through my lawn because my kids are complaining against their house.
Yeah. Well,
But
unfortunately,
as far as
that's,
going, I'm not against it.
unfortunately, that's not something that we can discuss here, but we do appreciate your comment
All right.
for or
Just-
against.
Just a thought that I was hoping that if you could give us a little bit more space, maybe you could.
I got you. Thank you. Hal, did you have a comment, and then we'll move on? State your name. I don't think Carolyn.
Excuse me, I'm old man, I don't walk too well. Yeah, I think out of the box sometimes. If we want to have a development of twin homes, there's acreage in town, have a development of twin homes.
Yeah.
Rather than, in my mind, it might denigrate that area.
Thank you for that comment.
If you want some acreage, I can put you in touch with someone that has some.
Okay.
I've got a real estate agent, but,
Right.
have a community of twin homes.
Right. I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Any thoughts or discussion by the council? Anything else? We'll consider ourselves back into regular session then. And would entertain a motion one way or the other.
I'd move to disapprove it
Okay.
as requested.
We have a motion to disapprove. Any discussion? Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a second. We'll do a roll call on this. Councilman Blusenbach?
Aye. I'll support this motion.
Okay. Councilman White?
Aye.
Councilman Riley, you have to vote.
Aye.
And Councilman Allen?
Aye.
Okay. I have a motion to keep it, so basically what I'm hearing is to disapprove and keep it as an R110, so you could do a single lot if you'd like, but it would have to stay as an R110, so. Okay,
It sounds to me like there's still an option of trying to work an R16 where the homes are not joined.
so, okay. All right, well, let's move forward. If I can get my, there, I was gonna say my feet, shut off. Oh, there, okay. CID application,
This was a multiple.
Ryan. Construction, now this is a CID application. This is for a 2 million gallon tank that will be at the top of our water system. Currently, we have a 300,000 gallon tank that's insufficient for our system and our needs. We've added people on, Cedarview Montwell. They're here with us tonight. Thanks for being here. Those that represent Cedarview. And so with that added draw in our system, this tank has really become obsolete. So we're looking at replacing that. Ryan, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, so Roosevelt City's always looking for funding to try to support the growth that we have and the demand for treated water. So currently we have a 300,000 gallon tank, which I'll try to point my little pointer now. Can you see that little thing up there? That's about the size of the tank too. So they're replacing the old 300,000 gallon tank with a 2 million gallon water storage tank. The city plans to go in to CIB, the funding, and our hopes is a 75-25 grant loan, 2.5%. To kind of give you an idea, the size of the existing tank, which was built in the 1980s, we had, none of the red was there and some of the blue wasn't there at the time in the 80s. And currently this tank is about the same size as our swimming pool that we have here. And last year we pumped 440 million gallons through it, and which is fine. But it was a lot of demand on our well pumps. The well pumps turning on and off quite a bit. So anyhow, in the last several years, I don't know when Cedarview, if one of you can answer me what year you started. Anyway.
2015.
2015. So Cedarview's all the red lines that's in there. And obviously they're wanting to grow more, they're wanting more water and we'd like to give it to them. But having this small tank kind of makes the options hard for us. Right now they're neck down to 300 gallons a minute. And so our next tank on the system is clear down right here, and that's a 2 million gallon tank, which is about 11.5 miles down to there. So we have our growth that we're experiencing is between the tanks. It's above our 2 million, which is taking a toll on this small tank up above. So it's been a good facility, but we've kind of outgrown it. So, Randy, click on the tank. I'll try not to bore you with all these pictures and graphs. So right here's my tank trends that we look at every day at the levels. So the black line represents the level of the water in the tank. The top black line, the jigsaw look, is the 300,000 we're wanting to replace. It's constantly either filling up or constantly dropping. It's never steady. It's always full, empty, full, empty, full, empty. And the bottom line is the 2 million gallon tank. This kind of shows you the difference of the trend. Flows, obviously, with the 2 million, we have more time with storage. You want to scroll down one? Now, this is well number 4. Now, this is only 20 days. I forgot to mention that earlier. It's a 20-day period. This is well 4 on how many times it's kicking on and off to fill that tank. Just an example of how much in pain it is, I guess. I think well 4 is wanting to kill me, but it's doing its job and hanging in there. Now scroll up 2. Oh, keep going that. Maybe go down, Randy, sorry.
That's all you've got on there.
That's all we have? Okay. On the right, underneath the tank, there's another one that might say, now scroll. Okay, no biggie. The swimming pool must have kicked it out or something. Anyway, it was a trend of showing when we had a leak up there. And this is probably our second biggest problem that we have with the small tank is, first of all, the storage is huge and the wear and tear on our pumps is huge. But also when we have a leak, we had a main line break up there, there we go. Okay, so the bottom one's that same tank trend. Now this is in the summer, and it's kind of irregular because every time it makes a different move, that's when either Neola or Cedar View kicks on and it affects it. Now we had a call, well, actually alarms went off about right there. That's when I know something's wrong, and I had probably 10 minutes to do something before the tank was drained. So right here, it drained real quick. It doesn't take much, and we have a huge line coming down, our distribution line. And so by the time we got valves shut down, the trend on the top is the wells, and they all kicked on to meet the demand of the leak. And finally, when we got it shut down, it filled up real fast, and then all the wells shut off. So is what I'm getting at. More storage obviously buys time. It gives us time to do what we want to do and get things fixed. The wear and tear on the pumps, we could fill up for a couple days and then let it drop for, right now, probably let it drop for a week before we had to turn on pumps. So some of the issues, I noted a few down, is the storage leaks when we have storms come through, power outages. It's always good to know that if the power's out, we've got, days instead of hours. And then for maintenance and repairs, when we drain it, it burns the chlorination pump. I mean, I can go on and on. I don't really want to list all of them right now, but it just would be useful to have a 2 million tank up above on top of our system versus the small one up there. And then I'd love to support our neighbors and the growth that they're having. I'd love to lift that 300 gallons a minute off them. You can't, they had a couple customers last summer that wanted 1,000 gallons a minute. And when I tell them 300 is all you have, it's not fun. Even though I know I can pump it. I can pump plenty of water, so it's just the storage capacity makes it difficult. Any questions? Or did I ramble on too much?
I think you covered it pretty well. I'll just make a quick point too. Cedar View is here with us partly because they use that system, but they're actually planning on adding on to their system. So they'll be going to CIB very shortly with a project that will add to what they already have, which will put even more stress on that.
Close that one out, back to that map.
Just a thought. And then a line that would run past Page Bent's clear down to the 2 million gallon tank is some future planning that we're looking at as well. So, which would also open up other area on top that's within Roosevelt city limits to grow, which would put even more stress on that. So.
Yeah, Mayor's talking about right here. That dotted redded line is where Cedar View's wanting to build their line. And eventually it'll come down here to our 1 million tank. So this is Page Bench area right here.
Any other questions? Seeing none?
I'll make just a comment. We reworked this application before just because to try to make it as good a chance of success as possible. And what we need to show CIB is that we're already past the capacity and we're in need to, not for any time in the future, but for right now, correct?
Exactly. It's not to have growth come, but it's to support what growth has already came. That's already here knocking on the door. If Cedar View ends up, I mean, they have several connections right here. That alone will affect just what we got going up above.
Great question, thank you. Another thing we talked about a little bit too is funding, making sure that we have adequate funds. Randy, what is our financial situation?
Well,
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I believe that if we get the funding as we're thinking we could to 75-25, we have paid a couple of loans off that will justify the cost, would fit in the budget. There's a lot of other things to look at, I think. Sales tax trends dropping just a little bit. If that's a steady course, that might be something to think, well, we're not gonna have the income there. Maybe on a little bit of a downturn there, so. But there's a lot of things to consider as well, but.
But currently we have, if we went in at the 75-25, we'd have adequate funds to pull it off.
I believe, yes.
All right, if seeing no other questions by the council, we'll go ahead and open it up for public hearing. Anybody from the public that would like to comment, please stand and state your name. If you can't make it to the front, that's okay.
I'm Judy Hamlin, and I'm with the Cedarview Montwell Special Service District, and this project for this 2 million gallon tank will affect us. I feel that we need to go through with this and help support Roosevelt City on this, and that's what we have decided as a board to do so. And I would also like to put my plug in that I would like to see it at a 75-25, 75% grant, 25% loan for that. If you can get it, that would be great. Yeah, we have other projects that we'd like to put in, and that's going to affect the service of the water, so.
Great, thank you. Yes, Chris.
Chris Thompson. You guys submitted loans to Water Resources. That'll be one of the first questions asked by CIB.
Water quality?
Water quality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah, we've been notified.
So we went several routes, EDA, water quality. Am I missing any? Those are the two, right?
That's the two.
And then, and so CIB looks like our best bet. So yeah.
Rural water is a good option right now too. You can claim emergency, you can say 25 there too.
Okay.
It's a good thought. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Jim.
Jim Marshall, just a question for you on the project, 75% grant, 25% cost to the city. You talked about the demand currently exceeds our current capabilities. I'm curious if there's additional revenues from water sales might offset some of that cost of that 25% in addition to sales tax or anything else.
We anticipate that there will be immediately we'll have Cedarview Montwell that will be buying more water. So but that'll be contingent on their project going through. The ability for that to happen in the future would definitely be there to sell more water and get the hookups and everything else, and it allow that infrastructure to be built without being bottlenecked by that tank. The problem is going into CIB, you don't want to present a project that we could get additional revenue in the future based on that. They want to see the immediate need now, but it absolutely justifies, or the growth would justify it and bring more water revenue. You're absolutely right. So, any other comments? Yeah.
Aaron Avery, Sunrise Engineering, and I represent, or we work for Cedarview Montwell, and I just wanted to reiterate what Judy said, and then what Ryan said as well too. In 2017, we completed a regional plan for Cedarview that looked at the sources of water where they could get water from around their area and how they could facilitate their growth. And this is not growth like future growth. This is just the existing homes getting water there too. And the most viable way is to rely upon Roosevelt for that area on the north side of Cedarview's area. Additionally too, if there was to be more loan money to GOES and Roosevelt was forced to pass those costs on to Cedarview, it would be very hard for Cedarview to bear those costs because they're already strapped for given what they already have as far as loans go too. So that would be really hard for them to take on any more increasing costs too.
Which would justify the higher grant to loan ratio. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll consider ourselves back in the regular session and would entertain a motion.
Move to approve, going to CIB for the grant mix, 2 million gallon tank.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Have a motion by Councilman White, second by Councilman Busenbark, and we'll do a roll call on this as well. We're not used to this. I just read it that we're supposed to, so I thought in the new year we'll start doing it. Councilman Busenbark.
Aye.
Councilman White.
Aye.
Councilman Riley.
Aye.
And Councilman Allen.
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous. So motion passes. We'll move forward with that and cross our fingers, hope for the best. Yes, Greg.
Do you have a time
Commissioner
when you're
Cox.
planning to do it?
As soon as possible. I don't know that we'll get funded. The funding meeting will be in June, so I anticipate, were we gonna try to get construction underway this year still, or?
Our main goal is to get in, the deadline for the application is February 3rd. But the budget, or the
Funding
that
meeting.
Funding meeting would be June, like you said, so bidding, it does put us late in the season.
The other thing is if we waited till next year, possibly through the winter time, we might be able to get more favorable bids on a project like that. So we're not in a big hurry. We're just wanting to get the funding secured so that we can move forward. Great. We're gonna turn some time over to Dex. He's been super patient with us. We've had a stretched out meeting, so Dex, we'll give you the floor.
Try to tell you what you need to know and not drag it out too far. My name is Dex Winterton. I'm General Manager of the Moon Lake Water Users Association, which, if you're not aware of, secondary water that you guys use here in the city is provided by one of our facilities, Big Sand Wash Reservoir. That was built as part of the Central Utah project. This is kind of just a map that shows the outline of the project, the enlarged reservoir, new intake pipeline, and Roosevelt pipeline that brings water into Roosevelt City. Currently, we're working with the Department of the Interior to do a full title transfer. With the enlargement of that reservoir, the federal government has an interest in the property and the stuff there. We've kind of been working on a lot of different ways to kind of get what was agreed upon to begin with. This title transfer is kind of our last avenue to be able to accomplish what was agreed to in the beginning. As part of this title transfer process, we need support of the stakeholders in the project. For you guys to receive water from this project, we'd like to ask for your support. With that, there's a draft letter that we have that we put together that kind of explains the process, what's going on, in a form of something that we'd like to ask you to sign showing your support of the title transfer. I'd like to take just a minute and kind of go through what it says and so you guys are aware of what we're asking for. So the first thing on there is that the kind of the description of the project. So there's the feeder pipeline diversion, feeder pipeline, and both of those work to bring water into the reservoir, the additional waters. The enlarged project, it took it from a little over 12,000 acre feet up to about 25,000 acre feet on the reservoir. And then from there, the Roosevelt pipeline, which makes the water deliveries to Roosevelt City as well as some of our stockholders. And so that was the project that was built, and it provides, we made agreements to do in-stream flows to enhance beneficial uses and different things there. Don't generate any hydropower, but it's increased, recreation up there as well. I think it's become quite a fishery that people really like. So that's just kind of a brief description of the project. It was completed in 2007, and according to the O&M agreement in 2001, Moon Lake has been operating and maintaining that reservoir. So, we've assumed all the responsibility. We've been doing all the maintenance up to this time. The project's assets, as defined before, is what will be coming to Moon Lake water users. So that all the pipelines, the enlarged reservoir, Roosevelt pipeline will be coming, full title and ownership will be coming to Moon Lake Water Users Association. The association doesn't have any repayment obligation on the project to the United States. There's no water rights or anything that will be changing hands in association with this. Then it kind of outlines in number 6 that it's the act that we're going under the authority of. It was passed in, I believe in 2019 John Deagle Title Transfer Act, which allows the Secretary of the Interior to authorize the title transfer of the project. And then number 7 is just the association, Moon Lake Water Users Association. We're a nonprofit corporation. It was organized in 1934. At that time, we took on Moon Lake Reservoir, which was a federal project, and we've been operating and maintaining that since 1934. The Department of the Interior has recognized this as being capable of taking over and maintaining this project and has agreed to proceed with this. And the biggest thing, I think, in number 8 that applies to the city is that as far as we're taking on all the responsibilities, which we already are, is making sure Roosevelt City gets their water, our stockholders get their water. As far as delivery of the water, that contract that says where the water goes stays in place. We're still obligated to do the exact same things. For the city in general, there's nothing that changes other than the removal of federal oversight and obligations to the federal government on the project, which brings it back to a local control of people you live with. And we're here to help you and be part of the community. It brings it back to more to our control and being able to work with you. Are there any questions? It's kind of a real quick overview, trying not to take up too much time. But kind of outlines, we're just looking for support in this process.
I'll just make a comment real quick, just to help clarify just a little bit. So Moon Lake controls Big Sand Wash Reservoir. Along with the federal government and others, that was expanded. When that was expanded, they had interest in that, like he already said. There was a chance that they might maintain control of that reservoir and not give that up. And so Dex and his group has fought really hard to regain and maintain control over that reservoir, so it's maintained by a local company, which I think is fantastic. And the act that was passed in 2019 was the gift that fell from heaven to actually push that along and make it happen, because before it was not looking like it was going to be something that would take place. So he's worked really hard to make this happen, and I think it's good that we have that back in our control. Second thing is secondary water. So a lot of and Ryan can attest to this, but all of your secondary water comes from Sand Wash. We water the golf course with Sand Wash. So we definitely have an interest. We have 2,000 acre feet available to Roosevelt City in that reservoir. So we definitely want to maintain that. So
And say, I think this title transfer opens up a lot of opportunities and a lot of benefits for the city and the county in general. There are things as far as payment on the project and I guess the surety that water will be here in the future is strengthened by what's taking place.
any questions for Dex? All right. Thanks, Dex. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. So if approved, then we'd go ahead and sign this letter of approval of what they're doing and get it back to Dry Gulch. Oh, yes.
For it to take place.
The letter.
Oh, this one is separate from the public comment. We did have a public meeting last week, and there was a time frame for public comments. If anybody would like to make public comments, we can make that available. Information available to you, I believe, is by February 14th. Okay, is when February 14th that they were accepting public comments, but we appreciate any and all positive comments on the project and what we're doing.
Thank you. All right.
I'll move to approve or support, whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, the motion that I typed was that you authorized the mayor to sign the letters.
Okay, I'll make that motion. Thank you, Carolyn.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilman Lusenbark and a second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item. Planning and zoning appointment, I'll make this really quickly. We advertised for several weeks. We have some vacancies on the Planning and Zoning Board. Nancy Boonder has limited out on how many terms she can serve, and Eric Larson has moved. And so we need to fill those 2 positions. Steve Timothy has also come up for reappointment or to be replaced. He agreed to stay and to be reappointed. So we have 2 names to submit to the council tonight, and they're both here. So I'd submit to you that we appoint Chris Thompson and Cody Fisher as the new planning and zoning board members. Any thoughts, discussion?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to approve by Councilman White,
Second.
second by Councilman Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Do you want to take care of that tonight, Carolyn? Swearing them in, or do you want to do it at the first planning and
Let's do
zoning
the
meeting?
first one, because I need to type up the.
Okay, perfect. All right. And thank you guys for being willing to serve. That's a thankless job, as you've already seen tonight. And I know what the pay is, and it's terrible. It's worse than mine, and that's terrible. So, all right, we have Bob. Again, you're on the hot seat again, Bob. We have a final plat approval for the pole line subdivision, phase 1.
They went to planning and zoning and with city council to approve it. And basically what it is, this is a property that was bought. And then went through all the process to put the lots together, and go through the ordinances, getting permission to do so. And then it was surveyed. And then upon the survey, they found that there was a 21-foot, we bought to the fence to the north, and we found that there was a 21-foot discrepancy on the survey. And so it took 7 years to get this 21-foot strip through the means, sign title and so forth, but that was approved. So now we can sell off that 21 foot to those people of 27 lots to have an additional 21 feet to their property. And this is the way the city recommended to do it, rather than just quit claim.
Any questions by the council?
What would a quit claim? Explain that.
There's 3 kinds of title, quit claim title, warranty deed, or a special deed. Quit claim title just states that you have bought the property and it's yours. But if you go through a warranty title or a special warranty title, that is a higher degree of right of ownership.
It doesn't actually change the degree of ownership. It's just on a quit claim deed, the owner's transferring whatever their right is. On a warranty deed, there's research being done to find out exactly what their interest in the property is. And then there's an insurance policy that's guaranteeing that you're getting sole ownership of it, with the exception of any encumbrances that are listed in the deed.
And so you're proposing that this goes through the process of everyone doing a warranty deed?
I'll give a warranty deed to the owners.
Okay.
I have a question.
And so you currently own the strip of all of those there, and then you are going to sell that strip to those owners. Now, one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of the owners on the north, so you have a gap. They've already built fences and things like that, and then you have owners from the south. So will you allow owners from the north and the south to buy, so it could actually zigzag back through there?
Most of them have been
Not that matters, but
the people on the north side want to continue to the north and buy the lot. If they don't, we can give the option to the person in Brighton Farms or to the north to buy it.
your question.
My question was just initially when the property was purchased, there was a discrepancy between you were buying to the fence line or something like that, but you actually
According to the
have
survey,
more-
it's 21 foot short. And that was in the plat, and the preliminary plans and everything went through, it was short. But it took 7 years to buy the property and do the title work and the attorneys and quiet title and buying from the heirs.
And I guess the thing going through my mind is when you bought the property, you bought X amount of acres or,
Yes.
and this is in addition to the amount of property you thought you were buying, or is it still the same amount of acres?
It's in part of the acreage I thought I bought.
So how about the people that bought the lots?
It was surveyed to be exactly what it is, 21 foot south of the fence.
So my question was just to make sure that the people didn't, like you already bought that property and found out that the line was wrong.
Yeah.
So you didn't owe anymore, but the people who bought the lots that you subdivided, I wanted to make sure that they didn't already think that they were getting that much already. If they did, then that would not make sense to then sell it to them again.
No, they didn't buy it. It wasn't available for sale. I didn't own it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get clear in my mind, because, but anyway, that was just,
I'm trying to solve the problem with the
Right.
strip in our city.
Yeah, so what, was there a reason for that strip to be there? Any utility easements or anything like that?
There is a utility there, and I made that indication on the plat.
But that wouldn't be a lot, well, if they did buy it, they would have that encumbrance on the property, and obviously that would be found in the warranty deed, so.
so is that part of why that strip was gonna be a right of way anyway?
No, there's a lot of issues through the county where people think they own to the fence, and when they have it surveyed, it's different from the fence. This is that kind of situation.
Just a mistake in the,
Yeah, most fences are built for convenience, not,
They weren't put on,
Yeah.
necessarily on the property line.
So how many of the properties south of the strip have homes in them? And then what is north of the strip?
can you bring up a, image of that area?
um,
GIS image?
homes are on the left side.
All there,
of the
then there's
line,
homes right in here.
line,
This is
and that's
empty.
called White
What
Farm.
it looks like.
And on the other strip to the right,
Why would you buy it
that's
if there's already
called
somebody
a vacant field.
behind you?
Well, there's just backyard.
That's
all it is.
Steve, planning and zoning, this came through planning and zoning. Did they have any concerns with this when it?
So it actually
We're
came
not gonna buy it.
twice,
He's
this
not gonna
time
be able to go on there and build
we
anything.
show,
You're gonna pay for it.
ownership, there's a preliminary time coming. And all we required was make sure all owners that do have ownership in it have signatures. And then also mark the, Dry Gulch irrigation lines.
And all that's been done?
And that was done, that was all, right, Bob, that's all we required.
Yeah, owners of record of who's bought, and owners of myself, and that's all on the plat.
Okay.
And then the council, or the planning and zoning said they want, is there any easements? There is an easement here where we have dry gulch come down and over, and that's noted on the plat also.
As long as all that's noted on the plat. Any other questions by the council? A little further south.
I just want to see, get a visual.
There it is.
You gotta look really close because the county didn't have it in their records for years. I hadn't pointed out to them.
So to your question, there, the majority, it looks like, with the exception of one lot's been built upon. So. Any other questions?
That's been built on too.
Oh, has it now?
Yes.
There's actually, you don't see the strip, the 21-foot strip, the county didn't have knowledge of it.
You can see the
kind of,
fences
you can
that are
kind
already-
of see
that
it.
are
Some of
already
those fences.
Somebody was
So you
smart
in
to put the
place,
fence, yeah.
and you already see the gap that's been created, so no man's land, we'll call it, anyway.
Yeah.
Any other questions by the council on that?
So I'm cheap. What would prevent the guy from the north and south just saying, we're not going to pay you, Bob, and you can't use the property, we can? I mean, you don't have access to it legally, right? Because there's no easement to get to it. So they could just do whatever they wanted with it. Correct?
They'd be trespassing.
Okay.
But this would clear it up. The plat
Yeah.
would clear it up and make it.
They don't want to put fences up and all the expenses that they need to do if they didn't have ownership.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilman White and a second by Councilman Riley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks, Bob. I'm sure that took a lot of time to get all that worked out. So that's kind of a pain in the rear.
Let's find an area we can get R2. Let's find an area we can get R2 approved.
You want to test this?
And start going some R2 in those. And the area doesn't have pitchforks. I mean, it looked like, you know what I mean? Because I'd like to see R2. Let's get a neighborhood.
Well, we got all the hard ones
They
done.
didn't want to do it. They should.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there would have been certain areas in the city that could do it, like all the
Yeah.
other sites. And this was, so somebody else goes through that. You know, go through it.
Yeah. Let's find an area that isn't built yet, that's available, that we could say, I'd like to see it, so people can.
Okay.
Oh, well, Grant's here.
I know.
Grant's here if you want to have him sign the top of that.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, thank you. Unless you want to stick around and enjoy the rest of the fun.
Here, this for somewhere else.
Oh. We're gonna go, oh, I skipped Title 17. We'll get to that right now. Oops.
Anything else?
You need to stretch your legs, now would be the time. Thanks, Bob. Steve? Sorry, I went out of order on the last one. I apologize. That's why we have them lettered, not numbered, so I can pick and choose. That's right. So we'll turn the time over to you.
Okay, so, we've been having some discussion on Title 17, and it relates, to the home occupation permits and things like that. And as the planning and zoning commission decided to come to you as a council and see what you feel about basically creating brand new ordinance or letting things how they are. With the home occupation permit, one of the key things is it's a home occupation. I've researched lots of different cities throughout the state, including Vernal, Duchesne, all over the Wasatch Front. A home occupation has to occupy a portion of the home. So to get a home occupation, that is part of the home. The home does not include outbuildings and it does not include attached garages. And so.
To clarify that, it's actually, I think, specifies living space.
Living space, yes. And so a garage is not living space. And so as a board, we felt we didn't really want to be the guinea pigs for the state to create a new ordinance to allow home occupation permits or a new type of business being in outbuildings within residential areas. But we felt we also should come to the council and see your feelings on that. One thing I learned reading a lot of other city zoning, home occupations are meant to be designed so they push the occupation to the correct commercial zone. They aren't meant to make it easy to work from home. They're meant to push somebody to be in the commercial zone where they belong. My personal opinion is we shouldn't create new laws, new zoning or ordinances to allow outbuildings to be the business, because I think that'll open a can of worms. It would give unfair advantage to many others who have put their necks out there and purchased or rented commercial properties. That, they have that overhead that they have to deal with the higher taxes and everything else that a commercial property brings. We have plenty of commercial areas that are empty within Roosevelt. And that's another concern is there are areas. One thing, like I said, attached garages can't be used. What has happened in many homes is the attached garage is actually turned into living space first. And then that living space is then turned into the home occupation. And we do see hair salons and things like that, where people have turned their garage into living space first so it can be part of a home occupation permit, or a proper home occupation. So planning and zoning, we just want to know your feelings on the idea of creating brand new ordinances to allow businesses to be in outbuildings. Which, like I said, I hadn't found any within the state that by ordinance allow it. Some cities may have instances where they said, yeah, do it, we don't care, we're ignoring our ordinances. That's basically what it boils down to. Because the ordinance actually reads that it has to be within living space of the home. So that's kind of what I needed to come and see what your feelings were.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up, and that does go along with a concern that's been brought up earlier tonight that we'll kind of talk about a little bit. So, and this isn't a public hearing, so if we do call on the public, then you're okay to speak, but it's not a public hearing, so we'll discuss it as a council, and then if we decide to go one way or the other, then we will go through the proper process to make that happen. And Grant, you be really, watch me like a hawk so that I don't misspeak or say anything that I shouldn't, okay? But, so there's been some discussion in planning and zoning, whether or not to allow certain things to happen. This outbuilding being one of those, having the nail salon in the backyard. Currently, one of the things that we need to clarify with the planning and zoning board, and I think that may have been misinterpreted or given some hope where there may not should have been hope given, is that the planning and zoning board isn't one to decide whether or not they're going to allow something. Their job is to interpret the laws or to look at the laws and then execute the laws. So we as the council legislate and we make the ordinances, create the ordinances through a process of public hearings and those types of things. And then the planning and zoning board's job and position is to enforce those laws. So currently with the current situation, we don't have an ordinance that allows that type of thing to happen. And unfortunately, we don't have a conditional use written into the law that would allow that. Does that make sense? So currently, the Planning and Zoning Commission cannot vote to allow that to happen unless they're in violation of our own ordinances, which would put us in a pretty poor legal position. Our job as a council, we personally shouldn't either vote to allow something that's not spelled out in our ordinances, but we, Steve, or this group, Planning and Zoning Board or this group, could write an ordinance that we could follow the proper process to allow those types of things to happen or not. But we really can't make a decision to allow a conditional use if it's not spelled out in our ordinances to allow that. And so our hands are kind of tied in that way. This is something that we went through not too long ago. Chris Anderton was here with his building and those types of things, talking about conditional uses, and we learned a lot. And so our job as a council is to legislate new laws if they need to be put into practice, but not to give conditions unless there are conditions spelled out that are met by the property owner. So we're kind of in an area where we can't allow it unless we change our law. And if there's a couple of ways to do that, again, it can be petitioned by the planning and zoning to come before the council to start that process to change that law. The council can start that process, or the residents can petition. And if you have enough people petition, then you can bring that before the council to be considered. Now, you can fill in all the blanks that I missed. Okay. So anyway, so that's where we're at with that situation, and any others that would arise is we have to follow our laws or we get ourselves into legal trouble. But if we need to change the law, there's a process for that. And so I guess that's the question at hand. And I think that's probably the question that Steve's bringing to the council is this something that we want to look at further and see if we want to change that law to allow that and make it a conditional use or make it a permitted use. So those are the two options. And or if we decide not to instigate that, then the residents can also petition. And if you get enough, and we can get to the numbers of how many people how many signatures you'd have to get, that can be instigated by the public as well. And then what we would do is it would go through planning and zoning, public hearing, and they would vote on that. And then once it went through the planning and zoning, the county would then vote on, or not the county, the council would then vote on that as a council. And if approved, then you would be able to do what you'd like to do. And then anybody else that came to the council for a similar use or similar petition would also be allowed. So it's fair for all. And I know, unfortunately, there were some that were already practicing those things, maybe illegally. And that may be something we need to look at as far as enforcement and making sure that somebody's not getting a free ride when somebody else is having to toe the line. So all things to be considered, but that's just my understanding. That's some information I thought I'd throw out there. So, any thoughts?
I have a question. Grant, if we did approve something, are we opening a floodgate that would be hard to turn off, or would every instance still need to go through the planning and zoning before it came before the council?
I mean, if you approved a new ordinance that allowed it now building.
Correct.
How is it right now? It's not conditional use, so they would still come in.
You would just still have to have it where they'd have to come to, planning and zoning.
Are they come to planning and zoning now, or is it being approved on an administrative level?
It depends on, the type of home occupation. There are some home occupations that are approved by the administration, and there are others that still need to come to planning and zoning.
Okay, so there's the answer.
Could we write it so that
Yeah,
it had
you
to
could
go
write it.
through
Yeah.
planning and zoning before it was printed?
Yeah,
Okay.
you could, with a new one, you could write it so that everything had to go through planning and zoning rather than wait.
And you guys would be okay with something like that? Coming,
Well, with the new one, you'd have to write it. The ideas that we had was if there were an ordinance, it'd need to be spelled out on fire code, walkways,
That's my thought.
setbacks. There's concerns by the fire department of things like that, having a business in the backyard, basically, things like that. And so all those would have to be spelled out on conditions that would need to be met to be able to do this.
I imagine they would be more commercial, along the commercial line than residential also.
And that was the concern, was having a commercial outbuilding in the middle of residential areas, you know? And yes, you still have your similar things in home occupation, but like I said, home occupations are supposed to really push people to be in the commercial zone where they belong. To help build the city versus just trying to do it willy-nilly wherever they want, you know. And that's kind of how I feel and kind of what I read in a lot of things.
Mike, I just have one more thought.
Yeah.
So, my thought about government is to stay out of the people's way as much as possible. And so if we did permit something like this and just to make a maximum square foot usage, and then again, we're not opening floodgates, we could turn it off at any time and change the ordinance and grandfather anybody into it if it became a problem. But, if people are serving a product, they're receiving tax revenue, and when they pay taxes to the city's still getting that. The only people that aren't are the landlords that own the commercial properties. So the city would still benefit from those.
Companies at the moment
There
aren't taxed, but
There are a few other things to consider with home occupations though, and Steve has kind of touched on this, but maybe not directly. But with home occupations, part of the reason that it's in living space is you're looking at things that can be done without having an impact on the surrounding properties, such as parking, sometimes it's a big one, road traffic. It can be things like noise. I've seen some that it was smell from chemicals. So there are a lot of reasons why you need to look at surrounding properties, not just the property of the person who's applying for the home occupation permit.
And to that point, one of the things I was thinking as we've been discussing this is what you do is you add another level of complexity when you allow something like that. If you want to then differentiate into what people can and can't do, then you have to really start to get, I don't know.
As a general rule, the things that are done in the living space seem to have been historically less likely to have an impact on neighbors than things that are in outbuildings.
See, my thought is somebody has a Dutch oven business. They've got a trailer, they're cooking all their food on their property and then driving that trailer to make the deliveries. So it's semantics it's happening, like the mayor said. And I think we just need to properly, in my opinion, provide a way for it to happen and then see what happens. That's the American experiment.
Any other thoughts?
One concern that I would have is just, I think Steve brought up, some of these types of businesses have already rented commercial space and stuff like that. If we allow them to be then in a backyard or something, how much commercial business and revenue would the city lose because they decide, I don't have to pay this much rent anymore. I can buy a building and I can put it in my home. And so I don't know that would be a lot, but we would have maybe people that are already set up doing it one way that would decide it's cheaper for me to do it this way. And it would be an impact on the city.
I look at it more as I see the impact on the city, but I look at it more from a resident standpoint and not only the one wanting to do what they want with their property, but the one that it affects. And that's what I'm trying to think of is a nail salon probably isn't a big deal in the back of the thing, but then where do you draw the line and how do you start to differentiate between all of the businesses that could potentially go in a backyard and to mitigate all the negative impacts that would have on the adjacent property owners. And so that's what I look at is the can of worm I think we open up is then we have to identify what's a permitted use in your backyard, what's not, and why, and then justify that and dial that in. Now, I think it can be done. I just think it's going to be somewhat cumbersome and it's not going to be done overnight. So, any other thoughts? So were you looking for any particular?
At this time, I think we were just looking to see if the council would like to proceed and create a new ordinance or look into that.
What I would be more inclined.
You guys would need to research more too.
Well, what I would be more inclined to pursue this is if there were instances that you found already happening like this in the state, which you said there are none.
Right.
And so that tells me that it may not be a good idea to go down that road.
And that's how we worked it, like Grant said, we have a lot of home occupations that now just have to go through staff to get those approved. It used to be that a home occupation was a conditional use and they had to come to every, come to a meeting. And so we changed the ordinance to make that easier. And the way we changed that was seeing what other cities have done, and kind of took the good from this one and this one, kind of combined it to make it work for us. And that's where it's really tough is there's nobody to take ideas from to make it work for us.
Well, I have a thought, and it goes along with what you were saying. Because we haven't seen a huge need as a council. We haven't seen this very often come before the council as for a conditional use. This is the first time that I've experienced it as being the mayor. So I don't know what the need is out there. But I would suggest if you feel really strongly, and there is a large number of people in our community that would like to see this happen, moving forward with the petition type of process would show us that, one, it's not an isolated incident, and two, that there is really a need in our community to make that ordinance change. And that's the direction that I personally think would be fair. And then if the community wants it and there's enough of them out there, then we'll put in the work to make it happen. But we just want to make sure that there's the need, that it's not just an isolated incident, that there's the need. And is that fair?
Yeah, I agree with what Councilman White's saying too, but I can't see a taco truck putting Mi Casa out of business. So I don't, either the services are needed or they aren't. I don't think we subtract from commercial services by small home-based businesses. I think we add convenience to the people located in that vicinity being able to perform those services. So I'd say, yeah,
and that's kind of what I'm saying. It's the experiment that you're talking about. If the experiment is that, and the need is that we go that direction, then there's going to be more than one incident out there. There's going to be more than one person needing this. And so it should be easy to find enough people to justify a petition to come before the council to go through the process to make that happen. And then as a council, I think it's our job to recognize that and definitely consider that. Is that fair?
So advertise a public hearing, or how
Well,
would you do that?
they would have to do the work to get enough people to sign. Do you know the number, Grant, off the top of your head? We could get you that information, but if enough people sign, then that would, you can petition that ordinance without us instigating that. Does that make sense? So you can make it come before the council, whether we like it or not. Not that we don't like it, but to me, that would show the council that there is a need. There's more than just a few people that think that this is a good idea. And that would help us in our decision as well. So.
On that, I just say the petition would need to be pretty vague as far as not, would you allow me to have this? It'd be more of a, this throughout a small business throughout the city kind of thing. Not petition for a conditional use for your specific situation, because it would have to apply for probably more than just nail salons, what I mean?
Well, and it'd be really hard to find, 100 people with nail salons wanting to do it in the back of their house. So it would have to be a general use. Go ahead, Nikki, yes.
Well, it just says in the permitted uses, there's such a limited amount of things that are even allowed in the permitted uses.
Right.
So there's 22 things that are even allowed within the permitted uses. So when you say you're gonna open up a floodgate, I don't really see that happening. Like, there's a girl currently at my salon that was working from home. She doesn't want to work from home because she wants the experience to be out in the public, to gain her clientele, to build a clientele. So there is a need for women to need to be in commercial zones and to be where there's gonna be a lot of people walking. I unfortunately don't have to build a clientele. I've got a good clientele. My clientele comes from word of mouth, so I don't need to be in a commercial zone where there's foot traffic to get more people to come into me. And frankly, to go into any of the commercial zones is kind of a death-defying feat. We had, for instance, she had a client not too long ago that was getting out of her car and her door got ripped off. because of the limited amount of parking in the commercial zones. So with our elderly clients, they have very limited options to even get into the commercial zones, because they either need to get out on the main street or they have to go in the back where it's kind of not really the most level of grounds to go down some stairs to get into our units, you know?
Right.
And I don't really see the floodgate issue, you know? And like, if you allow me to do it in a 10 by 12 building, and then somebody wants to put a 40 by 50, then no, that's not an allowable thing.
Yeah.
But a 10 by 12 shed.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at. It's not, and you're right about the floodgate. It's not that, I'm just saying that we can't, it's hard to discriminate when we start allowing people to do. I can think of some businesses that people have done or could do that are not what people would want around their house because they're smelly or whatever, you know, those types of things. So we're going to open it up for those types of businesses, what I'm saying. But ultimately, I think we're all, at least speaking in and of myself, we're willing to experiment with you and say, hey, if the people really want this and this is a need in our town, we need to address that. And that would be, you know, if you could get those signatures and have a petition, then it could be brought before the council in that way.
So with what Stephen is saying, can I like run it by somebody to word it right? Because if it's not worded right, then I don't want it to be thrown out because it wasn't worded correctly.
Right.
So like,
I'm just saying something.
Well, what I think the best thing to
More to
do
go with what's in.
would be, we meet Tuesdays. If you wanted to come in, we could give you some ideas on what it would need to say. And then you could take it to the public and see what the public thinks. Does that make sense? So we would assist you in that. Is that fair for me to say?
I can't represent her and the city at the same time.
Right, okay.
But I can provide copies of the laws, and so you can see what you need to do.
I think what Steve was saying is just when you do word it, open it up so it's more broad than just a hair salon or a nail salon, but it would be a whole bunch of different types of businesses could fit in there. That would make it so you'll get more people interested in signing than if it was just a nail salon or something.
Yeah, state your name.
Haley Dark. So I think mostly what she's talking about is sole proprietorships, right? We're not talking about corporations, we're not talking, I mean, could you limit it that way? Because the sole proprietorship is one person.
Well, and that's the thing is when we discuss it, like if you guys want to pursue it, those are things that we could talk about and say, how do we distinguish this? Yes. And
Because,
so,
I mean, that's gonna limit businesses that are available. I mean, if it's not, I mean, in LLC, you can have multiple people, but if that, you know,
yeah.
furniture is in there, I mean, it can be a corporation, because then you can have employees, you can have this, I mean, to keep
Right.
it small for home-based businesses.
Well, there's several things that we could write into that, and we can discuss those. But I think the general direction is that it is a possibility. It's just going to be work on your part to do that, and we're willing to help and assist in where we can, like Grant said. But it'll have to be originated from you guys. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So we'll look forward to that in the future. All right. I'm going to make this one quick. The Parks and Rec budget discussion. We already discussed this at our last meeting. This was talking about our new Arts, Parks and Rec committee having some funds to work with, a fixed budget. I went to the Arts, Parks and Rec meeting and discussed it with them and asked them if they'd be willing to appoint treasurers for each subcommittee and then a treasurer for the committee to keep track of all the funds that we were to give them. Now, there was some discussion. One of the things is that we talked about are the funds. Currently, there's $20,000 that has been allotted to the Basin Arts Council in the past that we talked about would be then allotted to the Arts, Parks and Rec Committee. In that, we felt like that amount of money should be given to them every year, regardless of their financial situation. Does that make sense? So we just budget $20,000 each year for that committee, and then whatever they do as far as events, sporting programs, those types of things, they would keep most of the money except for what the city would require to cover our costs and what we're doing to help. Does that make? So let's say we give them $20,000, they split it up. Each subcommittee gets $5,000. If they do an event, fundraising or whatever it may be, and they get more money, they get to keep that in their pot of money to utilize for the next year. And in addition to that, they would still get the $20,000 that was allotted them each year.
Would you clarify what you meant by we would give them $20,000, but there would be things that they would have to pay us back for? Is that what you?
Yeah, the things that I'm thinking of is if they're using our like ticketing system online and those types of things, then we could have a fixed rate that, hey, if you run an event through the city and we advertise and we collect the money and everything else, obviously that's taking up our resources, people and those types of things. So we would identify what portion upfront, what portion that we would require, and then they could keep the rest. And the good thing I see with that is sometimes in different areas of our city, they might want to have a big event one year, and that might cost more than the $20,000 that we would allot them. But if they were able to keep whatever revenue they got minus, the administration costs, then every once in a while they could do a big thing. Or if they wanted to go match fund for, things in our area, trails or, ball fields or whatever it may be, they could have a pretty big pot of money that they could go and pitch in with that with. So
My thought with that is definitely if it was something that cost the city more for them to do, that would be fine. But with the Basin Arts Council, the amount of money, and this has been a couple of years but the things that they were doing they could do the same thing every year, but the cost kept going up. And so that was a limited amount. So I would just want to make sure that if they needed to use a pavilion or something that isn't costing the city anything, that we allow them to do that and not have to pay. If it costs us money, then that's different. But if they just need to use a facility that we would normally charge, that we would allow them to do that without additional. That's one way to help with additional costs and things like that.
one of the things I'm thinking of with the additional cost, and you're right, I agree with you. But let's say if they were to take over some of the sports programs and be renting the fields, currently we because they're being mowed and taken care of by Roosevelt City, even though they're they're an entity of Roosevelt City, but some of those costs, instead of them keeping all that money, would trickle back to cover some of the administration costs. Kind of like soccer and football.
And I think after it gets going and we can see how much money they can generate, then we don't need to worry about it anymore. But as at least starting up, not charging them when we don't have to.
Sure.
Kind of thing.
So I guess the proposal that I would like to make for now is, with those things in mind, is that we still have $20,000 set aside for that has not been touched yet. We have the Missoula Arts Foundation that's supposed to come out of that, and because we're in a current budget year, I say that money still comes out of that pot of money. Whatever's left over, and also the 4th of July, whatever's left over, we divide up evenly between the subcommittees and let them run until June, where we'll have another budget meeting and we can address this further. But that'll give them the remainder of that budget to work with in the next 6 months. And then it'll be a good test to see how that works. And then by our budget meeting in June, when we would reallocate those funds, we'd have a much better idea of how that were to run.
Now, would they have the ability under the committee as a whole to decide if more needed to go to one committee than the other, or would we set it that it had to be divided equally?
Well, no, we could we would set it that it could be divided equally, but then there's a pot of money left to be utilized by any one subcommittee. And that would have to be voted on as a whole. Does that make sense? So there would still be some additional funds saved away so that if one subcommittee needed a little extra money, that could be given to them, but it would require a majority vote of the whole committee.
So they'd each get a set amount to start with, but there would be more to go where the needs were.
Yeah, so I'm thinking the Missoula Arts is around 45 to 5,500 a year. It's a pretty big deal. And then I'm not exactly sure on the 4th of July, but I'm guessing the remaining funds would be 12 to 13,000.
And the 4th of July depends on what entertainer they can get to come, right?
Right, and that's the other thing is where we have an arts subcommittee and you have the trails subcommittee and you have the sports subcommittee. Really, that committee should be doing 4th of July. They could be working with Mark Winterton to secure, whoever would be singing. They could also help with the Red Mud Run. The trails committee could take that on. So it would alleviate the burden of one or two people trying to put together that whole thing. And then we could incorporate the 4th of July into that, but then maybe in June we look at it and say we need to bolster their fund by a little bit. The 20,000 might be 22 or 23,000 just to cover some of those things. But I anticipated about $13,000 being left over that they could divide up. That would give them each like $3,500 with another 3,000 in the pot. Yeah. So anyway, that would be my proposal to the council, that we do that for now, in between now and June, and then reassess it in June and make the necessary tweaks by then. So
Do what? The amount of money.
That we would give the Arts, Parks and Rec Committee whatever funds are remaining, subtracting 4th of July and the Missoula Arts Fund, to them to utilize basically as they please, except there will be an accounting of all those funds that will be reported back to the council on how those funds are utilized. And Randy can help keep track.
We need a motion for that.
Yeah.
I move what he said.
That's not the way it's done.
So he motions that.
I motion that we fund the Arts Park and Rec as recommended by the mayor until the next budget allocation.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilman Riley, second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. They'll be super glad, because then they'll have at least a set amount of money they can work within, and that'll help them throughout the rest of the year. And it's already allocated to them anyway. This is just allow them to use it. Presentation from the Duchesne County Library Board. Daniel? Huh?
Mayor, I have to.
Okay. We still have a majority, so.
Yeah, you're good.
We're okay. Thanks, Don. I'm gonna see you a little later, but.
I gotta go in 15 minutes.
I'll try to make sure you cancel it next time.
Sounds good.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Good to see you, and welcome, gentlemen. We've been working with the previous city council on a new Roosevelt library that we intend to put our county funds towards. The library board's here, Chair Lorianne Potter, Jessica Shaw, she's the original rep, and Greg Todd also serves on that library board as well. So what we're proposing, a previous motion made by the city council was to explore selling 2 fields on Central Park's lot, and I think we have a picture of that, right? There was no price decided, which is what needs to be negotiated tonight. So that was one idea, but then there's the other picture as well. Yeah, there's that idea.
That's the preferred, right?
Yes, especially if we have to widen 200 West, because that's just basically we're gonna have that, and then we have to cut it off anyway on the west side to widen the road some more.
How does the road need to be widened, how much?
It's to facilitate parking on there. So did we ever decide how much?
I don't know that we decided an actual width. Do we have the master plan that has that included in it? Did we incorporate that into our master plan?
I'm sure it is.
I'll bet you it's within that master plan. I know the cost was anticipated. I know what the anticipated cost was, but the exact width, I'm not sure, other than we can look in our master plan and find that out.
And this would be in trade for getting rid of the old building and,
No, we
actually,
own the
so,
old building.
yeah.
oh, okay,
So
but we could
the-
tear it
the
down and
current
expand the
library
gym that direction.
Is city.
Yeah, or they do whatever we
The
want.
city built it 30 years ago in '86. It's always been a city building. In fact, the land has been owned and landscaped by the city. So that basically would just turn back over to you when we vacate it. That is what happens. The county's just been running it since the county tax came into existence over a decade ago. That was double taxation, and so the county took it over. Still city property though. So the idea here, we did a feasibility study last year, and we did some public comment as well. And what we would like to do is right now the current library is about 4,000, a little over 4,000 square feet. We would like to do a 15,000 square foot building. And we are also going to go to CIB once we have a piece of land that we can take with us to CIB to do that project. The idea kind of is that with that ball field that was really shortened up by the pool, that could become the parking lot, and that the majority of the building would sit up on the upper field there. And lots of new amenities added. I mean, we aren't looking to build an even bigger book warehouse than we have. We have a book warehouse and videos and things like that. But from our feasibility study and from the surveys we did with the public and public meetings that we held, community spaces in demand for events, study rooms, a little more technology available. People want to see space for the community to come together and do things. The Arts and Rec Committee, we've had a lot of input from performing arts people in particular. You know, gosh, it'd be nice that community room could be more conducive to recitals and whatnot like that. So anyway, a lot of interest to get that project done. So what we're wondering is this piece of land was just roughly estimated when we looked at the county GIS, 1.68 acres. The property line would be, you see the diagonal of the fence. This is the fence, right? And then there's that diagonal. So up here and then up to that diagonal, taking it up to the street there is what we're looking at as the dividing line.
I don't think we need to talk much about this, right? Anybody?
Well, we need to, what they want to do is make an offer, and I think we probably want to do that in closed session, and then we can discuss it. But if we do make a decision tonight, we'll have to go back out in open session and make that known to the public, whatever is decided. So what they've come to us and proposed this, and it's already actually been, so we're not approving whether or not to sell them that piece of the property. We're just talking about at what price. So it's already been decided to sell the property to them as long as we can decide on the price. And that's what they've come tonight to do, is to.
And this is a factor that I think we need to look at too, is this. We're buying this and then giving it back as a wide road, as a road.
Yeah. And that was part of the negotiations in the beginning. So that was understood by many of the council prior, that, and by the library board as well. I think that was an understanding fairly, soon in the beginning of the negotiation process. So, yeah.
Did you have a timeline on this? I mean, if it's approved, the purchase and everything?
Another thing to consider is they're wanting to get started. That will take out 2 ball fields. In talking with the baseball community, the
softball
and softball.
This is just softball.
Oh yeah, softball. Okay, thanks. Hey, but one's bigger than the other. That's all. So the softball community, they thought it was great. What we anticipate is taking the funds that we get from this and build new fields within the walking park at Constitution Park. And we would want to do that as quickly as possible. They want to get started building as quickly as possible. So,
But I think our time frame is looking at spring of 21. We go CIB this year. probably bid out the project later in the year.
If we can agree on a price, Ryan Claiborne and I have visited with Kevin and Lori with UBAG, who helps write those applications for CIB. We could get it on the list and get it in to the June CIB meeting, and may be able to do a suspend and fund and get the funds this year and get started on those ball fields this year, so that next year when they're ready to build, we're out of your way. We already have the softball fields built, and there won't be any,
So the price discussion will be in a closed meeting?
I feel like, where we haven't settled on a price, it might be best that what I anticipate happening in the closed session meeting is they would tell us what they think the price should be. We can ask them to leave. We can discuss it as a council, whether or not we feel that's a fair price. Then if we feel that's a fair price, then we can bring them back in and say, yes, we agree that's a fair price, go back into open session, and then say whatever that price is and vote on it.
So what do we need a motion for? We need to move
Do you need
to.
any more? I mean, we have 2 brand new.
Yeah, do you?
No, this is a
No, it's-
fantastic idea. Do
There's
it
a need for
yesterday.
both, absolutely, definitely need.
When.
Yeah, do it 2 years ago.
Obviously, the use, we've shared this information with y'all before, we just got our statistics, and again, 50,000 visits in the Roosevelt Library last year, 80,000 items were checked out, 5,000 people came to events that the Roosevelt branch just put on. I mean, there's a lot of use in that regard, and that's just with with not having any space to do interview
right.
studies, things like that people call us from, like, we don't have a facility, we're so sorry. So we are confident that it will be used well once we have it. And with the added use, it will make it a much more versatile facility and resource to the community. We're excited for it.
It's really an asset to our community. And the other thing, it goes well with the master plan. So one of the comments was made that, all the commercial property is on Highway 40 and it's dangerous. And so we're trying to create foot traffic and really put more of that and turn the commercial property and the property on Lagoon Street into that type of an area that has more parking, a lot less dangerous, and those types of things. So this fits really well within our master plan to have something like that within walking distance to other businesses that are in that area, and to have a draw coming to that area. I think it's
And then we vacate the building and you can use the current library for other purposes.
basketball with all the poles.
Yeah, so what do we need to do?
Dodgeball.
Let's do it.
Dodge the pole. Yeah, so what we need is a motion. So one of the things that I'm going to preface, we do have another item, and it's interim personnel compensation discussion that I think we should talk about in closed session before we make an open motion. And so what I would ask is that we make a motion to go into closed session to discuss and to negotiate the sale of that property, and to discuss the personnel compensation for those interim employees that are taking on more responsibilities, since we're down three full-time positions. So I would entertain a motion to discuss those 2 things in a closed session.
I move to go to a closed session, discuss those 2 items.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We won't be awful long, so if you guys want to hang out in the hall and come back in, we'll be here.
Do we have to have in that motion?
How much time? You don't have much time left, Vince?
I gotta get going.
Well,
But I hate to,
I wonder how we do this, where there are only 2 of us.
Oh,
I gotta go here pretty soon.
well, we better